Good to go. There we go, we've started. So good morning, or good afternoon even, everyone. My name's Ebony James. I'm going to be your host today. I founded the Diversity Innovation Group because I just felt that we'd got to a point where financial services, professional services, legal services, they weren't diverse enough, from a racial, from a gender, from you know, in terms of socioeconomic background, in terms of people's identity, and they just didn't have enough, or they just don't feel like they have enough inclusivity at the moment. So what I wanted to do was bring people together, provide a platform where they could collaborate, where they could share ideas, where they could see other people's best practice and go, right, okay, how can we tweak that? How can we implement that here? How can I maybe take inspiration from that and do something in my organization or with my business and make that more inclusive? And ultimately just raise awareness, because often these things aren't born out of racism or out of discrimination. They're often born just because you don't necessarily know or are aware that people are feeling this way or are aware of some of the cultural issues. And that's really why I created the group. From there, we have run a number of sessions, including the one that we're doing today, which is called Ask Anything. And seriously, I want you to ask me anything. So, I ask the panel anything. I'm not going to answer. Don't worry. So, in terms of questions, you don't necessarily have to ask a specific question. You can just say, I have thoughts around this topic. What do you think? It can be a specific question. The whole point is that if you have questions that you are maybe scared of asking in other platforms, or you're kind of scared that if you ask a person directly, it might offend them, unintentionally, of course, then this is the platform for that. The panel are geared up to answer those questions, and they're really excited. And I guess there's no topic that's too controversial or an issue at this point. Obviously, please don't ask questions that are just outright offensive, because that's not what we're here for. It is still a professional platform, but you can ask those questions, and please don't worry about getting the wording exactly right. Generally, the panel are all very, very smart. They will keep up, and they'll get what you mean, and try and give you the best answer. Just in terms of how those questions will work, I have put this in the chat if people find it easier to just read through. But essentially, you can ask them live on the session by raising your hand. You can ask them in the chat, or you can text me. So I've put in my personal mobile number if you prefer to ask them anonymously. I'm going to have this in front of me here, so they should come through. I probably won't have your number, so don't worry, I won't know it's you. And I will delete all the text after the event, so please don't think I'm going to use the data and then hound you recruitment wise or anything like that. That's not the aim of the game here. So please feel free to use any of those platforms. I'm going to alternate to try and make it like fairness. So there's no kind of like, we're going to go through all the live ones first and not get to the chat. And then, I'm going to shut up talking and let the panel introduce themselves, and let's kick off. But thank you again for joining. So let's start with Michael.
Thank you, Ebony. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael. I head up talent and talent acquisition for the Arab Banking Corporation in the City of London, here in London. And I've had the pleasure of working with Ebony for about 2 years now. So welcome any questions that you may or may not have.
Manawar, should we go next?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Manawar Saeed. I work for the Financial Conduct Authority. I'm co-chair of one of the race and ethnicity networks, Spectrum. And I'm looking forward to your questions today. So hopefully I'll get more than one question fired at me. But I guess what I'm trying to do is help colleagues to break down barriers and say, look, it's okay to ask questions in this safe space. Over to you, Lou.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Lou Castello. My pronouns are they, them. And I am wearing a beige top. I have long blonde hair, and my background is white. And I'm the founder of a company called Limuni, which is a Sicilian word for lemons. And we work with founders who want to build healthy company cultures. So this is what we work at. And as Manawar said, yeah, no question is a bad question. Just, this is a safe space to ask what you're curious about, what you want to understand better. So yeah, also if you want to make any questions related to non-binary people, trans people, I'm the right person for it. Don't be scared. You can make those questions to me, okay? But yeah.
Amazing. Thanks, guys, for the intros. So, without further ado, I have got a few questions that have been asked in advance if no one feels brave enough to go first, but I would love you the most if you do. So, feel free. Anyone? Let's kick off. There we go. Ijoma, if you'd like to go first.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to get the panel's view on introducing D&I initiatives to a smaller company and how do you get started?
Oh, what a great question. I'm not jumping in ahead of Lou and Manawar, but
Go for it.
we are, so I'm kind of doing it. Sorry, guys. Where I'm working at the moment in the City of London, we are very excited because we publicly are sort of actively looking for our first D&I or DE&I manager at the moment. And from a organizational globally standpoint of sort of 4, 5, 6,000 people, we've never had this role before. So this question was fantastic, but what it does do, it opened up a spider web of questions of having to look internally in terms of our culture, where we are, where we want to be. And to answer your question, just understanding where do you start. And I think anyone who's not been involved in D&I and trying to implement into an organization, it's the first time I'm involved in the implementation piece. Understanding just where your culture, where your organization is or isn't, to not restrict sort of talent boundaries or workforce diversity and the importance and the impact, and understanding then when that sort of D&I, whether it be a person, initiatives, policies, and how they shape and drive you forward. We've been talking about it for 2 years and we've been going at pace, but it's just genuinely, we've had consultants, specialists, but it's so complex. I think the finish line for most companies, what I've learned after 2 years is, because it's such a big topic. I think the finish line for a lot of companies in terms of where you want to get to, doesn't mean it's finished, but in terms of hitting certain milestones is similar, depending on the size. But I think the starting point of that race is different case by case by case of every single company department. So whilst I used the 100-meter sort of analogy, we want to get to that 100-meter finish line. It's not a finish line. It's a milestone because you'll just be going round and round because the world is evolving, changing. And it's understanding your starting point is what we've probably lost 2 years on, is understanding who we are and looking inwards and saying, what do we have? What do we not have actually is the real question. What do we want to have? And it really, genuinely, we had 2 years of meetings about it, and it's right up to C-level CEO, and it's the gender diversity piece, and it's all the protected classes, but it's actually looking at also just company, recruitment, talent procedures, actually looking at our company policies. There's so many holes where we had to fill or adjust, and things happened, but it wasn't documented. So actually, I just think it's understanding where you are in the journey is a crucial step that we experienced. However, I think if you speak to 100 people, you will certainly receive probably many different answers. But to break it down is you have to know before you start the journey where you are, and then you start mapping at where you want to get to, or what good looks like, and then start linking in with others, because there's lessons learned and learnings all the time, because the topic is evolving day to day.
Yeah, and trying to keep it proportionate as well.
Yeah, good luck with that.
We're a sort of startup in our maturing phase, so it's kind of going from that kind of startup energy to more corporate governance, bringing in ESG policies, and then part of that is D&I. So it's probably something that hasn't been thought about before, and it's kind of bringing that conversation to the table. Because usually the first instinct is like, we don't have a problem with it.
my only comment is I came into an organization which was already established, and I think that has different challenges because it's a change the bank or change the organization process. If you're in a startup, I don't think it's easier, but for me, what I've learned, and my boss and department being HR, is D&I has to be at the heart of the organization, is one of the sort of taglines we're using, and a lot of people don't understand what that means. By default, D&I is involved in every policy, every employee, every department, every level. We're talking front of desk, whether they're contractors or perm, to the people who walk past, to the advertising, to the roles, to internal, external communicator, it's everything. And understanding that D&I is, whether you choose to be a D&I friendly or not organization, it is involved in absolutely everything at every level. And they don't realize it's a double axis. Everyone thinks it's just a checklist of things. There's a double axis element where you have to weigh it out. And I think if you're starting a journey where it's a startup and, I'd say under maybe 500 or 1,000 people, and you have the opportunity to insert that D&I piece now, I think it's super exciting. I think it's a whole lot different to what we're going through right now, which is great, but it's just a different journey.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
And Lou, what would your thoughts be on this, with you being a karma expert? Your karma culture expert, sorry for that.
Yeah, no, I have, similar thoughts to Michael. My experience is more of, when I used to work for companies internally, I used to be an events operation manager. So I found that there was a lot of resistance for me to initiate culture initiatives, and because it has always been seen as an HR responsibility. And so part of the reason why I started my own business was actually to be able to work in designing culture systems that support the AI practices. So now with my own business, the way we present it to companies, one way it's my work one-to-one with founders, which I find incredibly effective, much faster in terms of bringing change. And usually the founders I work with tend to be in quite fast growth but young companies. So they're still under 100 employees, which is great because I can catch them before, the never-ending amount of unhealthy operations and practices. So it's a really good stage to get in. But now that I'm getting asked a little bit more for corporate trainings, what I'm going in with first, it's always a culture audit. So like Michael was saying, you need to be able to shoot a picture of like what's exactly happening in your company, because yes, DEI it's never ending topic, because obviously it's about humans, and humans are as varied as they come. So I think the important thing when you get a culture audit done is that you realize, okay, what needs to be prioritized in this grand scheme of things. So I think that will be the best way to optimize your budgets, your resources, and to give the right attention to what is really damaging your people, your teams. What's damaging the people in your business? Because if you ask them, they will tell you. If you ask them in a safe way with anonymous feedback forms, voluntary qualitative interviews, if you build a safe way to collect that data, which is really precious, your people and also the people that left you can give you incredible insights and can really tell you this is what is needed right now more than anything else, and obviously there should always be, depending on the makeup of the company, obviously if a company is, for example, racially white dominated, obviously these people will talk about problems that unlikely are going to foster more inclusivity for Black people, for example. So there needs to be a balance to what the company perceive they need, like the people perceive they need, and also balance of where the company wants to get, as in terms of values, in terms of diversification of people, and so on. So that's my take on it. I don't know if Manawar wants to.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've just been listening impatiently. So thank you for that. Look, I'm not going to add much more to what Michael and Lou have said, but what I'm going to say is it's important that whatever you do, you link it in with your company's strategy and the vision, and then there's a D&I strategy as well. Hopefully there will be one. If there isn't one, then work on that D&I strategy. It has to be baby steps to land it properly. And then the next thing after that is you put terms of reference together and be realistic in terms of what you can achieve in year 1, year 2, year 3. And then the most important part, and Lou touched on it and Michael as well, is have a working group. It's not your problem as an individual, it's the company's problem. You've got to bring everyone with you on the journey. And then what you've got to understand is that once you form the working group, what sort of networks are you going to have in your company? So what I mean by that is you could have race and ethnicity. You could have a network that looks solely at disability, and disability is not just visible. It could be hidden disability. There's an element of LGBT, looking at that and ensuring that you fully understand in terms of what the diversity means, what the equity and the inclusion, and what steps are you going to give your colleagues to fully understand what each of those three mean. Because often what people do is they jump into D, E, and I and then discover things. So it's important that you do the upfront planning and you reach out to groups like this and ask those sort of questions to set things up. There are consultants out there as well. I'm not going to plug any, but what I'm going to say is that it's not something you can implement overnight. It takes time, and you have to bring people with you in terms of the very top and the very bottom. That's all I'm going to add to what Lou and Michael have added. Thank you.
Can I add something to what Manawar just said? I think it's going to be quite useful to actually share a tool that I use for these, transversal, like trying to understand, okay, what are the areas we need to look at and how we need to look at. It's actually what usually is called a gender mainstreaming tool. This is usually a tool that was invented for women inclusion at all levels of society. If you look at the Council of Vienna, they have a great example of how they use this tool in the urban planning, architecture, everything related to the city. But if you take this mainstreaming tool, you can actually adapt it to, gender, race, religion, disabilities, sexuality, did I say religion? I think so. So all those intersectionalities, and you can use the mainstreaming tool, which analyzes about, I think, 5 dimensions, which is, the authority gap, for example. So understanding, okay, in terms of race, how many people in leadership are white, black, Latino, and all the kind of races. And then what you can add to the dimension, because the original gender mainstreaming tool doesn't have intersectionality in it, unfortunately, because it was not built from the Black communities. But as we know, intersectionality is extremely important. And so you can link this mainstreaming tool to each area, gender, race, diversity, like religion, that all these kind of elements, and then use intersectionality to connect them and to bring people together in shifting the culture. So this is a tool that I use, I started to adapt from gender mainstreaming, and I think is extremely helpful in dissecting exactly where you need to look at and how you need to look at it.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much, guys. These answers are absolutely incredible. And you really are going into like everything that's so important. I couldn't agree or add anything more. Now, the next question is coming from the chat. I'm actually going to direct this one to Mike, and just for the sake of speed, I'll probably direct some. But before I do direct this one to Mike, the reason being it being recruitment heavy, I might even take a little bit of a stab at an answer myself. So the question is, what can recruitment consultants do to attract a more diverse talent pool, or to attract a more diverse pool of candidates? So one of the tips that I do is just reaching out to lots of different people. Don't try and fit a certain mold. If you've got, if you've noticed that you're hiring for a specific position and it tends to be with 10 years experience in that background, that you're only getting those type of candidates, but you want diversity, you need to change your brief. You need to say, right, well, we're going to prioritize diversity and actually train someone. We're going to develop that person, or we're going to hire someone even more senior and allow them to come in and train others, just because they don't fit the mold that we want specifically, or they have an extra couple of years, but they've developed experience maybe overseas previously. They're going to bring that diversity. They're going to bring a wealth of knowledge to you. So I think it is just a case of adapting your profiles. The second thing I would say, and again, promise I'm not just plugging, but use consultants who specialize in recruiting diverse talent, like myself. I build a network of diverse talent. I naturally attract a lot of candidates who are from ethnicity backgrounds and LGBT because of the brand. And that's generally how it works. It is just about that brand and putting the advert out there, and then obviously being able to capture that. Other talented professionals in recruitment will be doing the same. So make sure that they are genuinely doing it, not just saying, oh, I care about D&I, because they're not always the same. So make sure they are a genuine D&I specialist with that recruitment piece and use them. But Mike, please, could you add some more for us?
No, yes, some.
Oh,
It's quite a broad question.
There we go.
oh, it's freezing out.
Yeah.
Oh, we're having a little freeze. Technology, yeah. Love it when it works, and when it doesn't, it's a bit arcs. So, sorry about this, Mike. Mike would have given an amazing answer. I will be back. You back?
I'm back.
Ah, there we go.
Okay.
I'm back. Sorry, Wi-Fi. So
Sorry.
I was going to say probably very quick. I mean, this is a really broad topic, and I probably we would never have enough time because these kind of questions you really need to sort of break down case by cases. What I would say is number one, and this is just how I've planned it in my head, a little bit controversial internally. I've said it this morning again. The hiring manager is genuinely the most important person in the recruitment process, whether you're a talent acquisition professional or recruiter. For me personally, the hiring manager makes the decision. So for me, I put a lot of my energy into, yes, the job descriptions, the wording, the inclusion, making it gender neutral. But I actually try to put the time into the hiring managers before we get to interview stage or before the process. They need to know what the expectation is. I've got to a stage now where I actually attend the interviews. If there's any doubt, if it's not a clear yes that this person is hiring, from different classes, different ages, or there may be, not that there is, if I feel instinctively that I'm just not 100%, what I want to do is support and provide a psychological value to the candidates, whether they're through an agency, a search firm, direct, internals. The point here is the hiring managers, and it's not that they're good or the good guys or the bad guys. It's actually just a case of opening people's minds. If we can start with the hiring managers, which is where my energy goes into, they ultimately will decide. Now we can shape, guide, form, and lead, but at the end of the day, we have to build some momentum. And with diversity, you have to start somewhere. So I start on with the hiring managers. The second thing I've done is and I'm going to edge the question very quickly before I end, is working with recruitment agents, search firms. Ebony is a perfect example for me personally. We had a focus, not an issue, but we had a focus on gender diversity at certain levels. For me, my first step was I didn't Google and go after what everyone else was doing. I actually looked at my recruiters because they are representing my organization and my vacancy. I went and wanted female recruiters. I want people from different classes who fit in, understand, can attract, but actually can relate. It's putting the people element back into every step of the journey. For me, that's been missing in from a talent acquisition or recruitment standpoint. There's far too much focus on saying the right thing, ticking boxes. The reality is every organization has a different sort of conundrum or spider web to untangle. For me, the people who represent me are everything. So if I get somebody like Ebony, she's coming with energy. She's open-minded. If you get to know her, she will talk to anybody. She's so fair, but she's honest. But she will present a CV and say, Mike, this person doesn't have A, B, and C, but what they do, and this is my point to this answer, is she'll find the balance point of, but they have D, E, and F, G. And actually in this role, the way the market's going 12 to 18 months from now, this will become like a real hot thing. And actually, so she's always finding the pros and cons and selling it. And it's not the salesman of Ebony. It's actually she's finding the balance the rebalancing point, which I think a lot of people don't look at that. Transferable skills, learning skills, change skills, reskills. This is all great, but we start with people first. What can they do? What can they learn? When, by? And then what comes with that hire? Not who do I hire? What comes with the hire? And what I mean by that is they bring this. We now know 80% is done there, 10% investment goes in there. We know there's probably a problem with that 10%. Perfect. We know, well, not issues, where the development areas are going to be. And I think it's a real mature approach. So I have people like Ebony and maybe one or two others, and that's why they do so well for me. And that's why I think they stand out in the market, because I think it's not just about diversity and ticking boxes. It's actually diversity of thought. It has to start there. Now, I can go on for about 40 minutes. So I'm conscious of time. So let me pause there. But that's kind of just, we have to come out of this box before we go back into it and reshape it. And everyone has a different shaped box, but we must be constantly evolving and shaping it, trying it. It's trial and error. But we have to understand that we don't understand every applicant, every hiring manager, every recruiter from every country at every generation, Z, millennials, the next lot that's going to come through. We have to be open-minded. It's not a question. It's, it's a mandatory thing that the world is evolving, and the type of workforces we have, the companies don't tell the workforce or the talent what to do. It's the other way around. And they are, and the talent for war is over, by the way, guys. I keep reading about it. Talent won. So we have to adapt to the needs of what's in front of us. I can go on with a third point, but I'll stop there and save everyone the time.
I'm just like, Mike, thank you. I think you were going for delivering the most amazing answer and trying to make me cry at the same time there. Feeling a little bit emotional. So I'm just going to thank you. No, I really appreciate that, and amazing answer as always. Manawar, before we move on to David, I know you've been patiently waiting and you've got a question
look,
there, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not a question. It's just an addition to say that if someone's doing the recruitment or they're sitting on the other end, they're in the interview process, they should go and take some unconscious bias training, undergo some unconscious bias training, because that's the biggest thing. Because, often people make their decisions within 3 seconds of meeting someone, and that's a fact. 3 seconds. So if they've had the unconscious bias training, hopefully they'll go through the motions and do things correctly. And that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
No, I couldn't agree more. And to be fair, often that unconscious bias isn't something that you even know about and aware of. And I think it's just becoming more aware of that bias can then obviously make you react differently and take a slower approach. So completely agree. Now, David, you've been waiting. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ebony. I've changed my question in my head probably 4 times as I've listened to this, which has been great. I started my career at HSBC, where we had very well established employee groups and an enormous global HR team, and it was very clear who was responsible for what. I'm now in a much smaller organisation with about 1,400 staff, and we have an inclusion group of probably 15 people, maybe 6 of whom are involved. And we have 1 person from the LGBTQ+ community, 1 person from an ethnic minority. How do you mobilize a very small kind of network group like that to push such a big agenda uphill, if that makes sense? When you've got so little breadth of experience among the group members, and you're really reliant on a couple of key individuals to push things along. Can I take that one, Ebony?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, David, thanks for that. That's a great question. I think there's an educational piece in terms of what you're trying to achieve. So HSBC was pretty similar to a place that I work, Lloyds Banking Group, and their journey in terms of understanding the various different colleagues that you've got in the organization, and then understanding some of the information they're prepared to share in terms of race, gender, and so forth. And there could be an element of social mobility in there as well. So the biggest thing is, David, I would look at your experiences in HSBC and think to yourself, what can you bring across from that learning to your new company? right? And then put together a business case that you can take up to very senior colleagues and talk to them about a need to set up these various networks because of intersectionality. We can't just be focusing on race and ethnicity. There's got to be a network for, you know, international colleagues. Faith and roots, religion is a very big thing. And there's another one that none of us have mentioned in terms of parents and carers. There's lots of parent and carer responsibilities, and a lot of that's come to the fore since COVID. So the bit that you can do is emulate what HSBC have done. I'm sure they would have set up the networks based on the demographic of their teams, but there's also an educational piece as well. And the educational piece is, you know, for someone to undertake D&I training and understand, you know, like I was saying earlier on, what the equity is and what tools and techniques you can give to colleagues so that they feel comfortable in their roles and they, you know, they can feel that they can have a conversation. I'll hand over to Lou now, just because I'm conscious of time, and then probably Michael want to add something to that.
Yeah, thank you. To add to that, well, obviously, yeah, build a business case. I mean, you know, I'm that one person that will tell you it's not encouraging that this is coming from the bottom. It really should come from the top. Like, if we really need to talk about this, but if this is your situation, like, you know, I've worked with many people that had this same situation. I would say yes, build a business case, as Manawar was saying. In this business case, you want to be bring extremely practical examples, because it's really easy to just like get, you know, on a massive like conversation is good on a moral level, but like, how does that look in practice? So really build practical examples of what is needed. And I would say back that up with a culture audit, so with actual data from your company, and saying 1,000 people in our organizations are saying that this is a barrier to that, and this is how we can solve it. So really like build the pain point, show the solution, and your conversation with the bosses is going to be about building that bridge, you know, and actually take that action in terms of budgeting and in terms of operational. Okay. And another thing I think is really useful is to identify the natural influencers and leaders in your company, because very often it's not the people that have a big title. It's actually like the people that are elected from the people. And so they will help you also when it comes to activate that change. But if you start from a culture audit point of view, I think that would involve people in already understanding the need for change, so that when you come to the bosses, it's just a matter of getting an okay. And then when you actually go back into taking action, most of the people in your organization are already in, and they already understand the need for that change, and they're going to be more involved in taking proper action.
Great question, great answers. And then Mike, I was just about to say, do you want to add?
No, I was just going to say, I think Manawar and Lou, I completely agree. The 3 points I jotted down was, David, was at start. With my previous organisation, I was at a bank in York Mellon, and it's just before COVID. And one of the things, and it sounds so silly, it's just start. It's just start. And I saw many people come up with for certain protected classes for groups, and they never kicked off some of the groups. Probably they didn't go as far as they should have, because there was too much planning and talking and being tactical. There was a group, and I won't go into which of the groups, but they just started. And what they did was, I just learned, and I watched it grow in 2 years. It only worked because they worked, and it was just the passion and energy and focus they put into it. They made it fun, but they really became inclusive. And it was more on the gender diversity side, but they pulled in guys, men, female, left and right, different ages. And what happened was, it got to point 2 and 3, which Lou just covered, was they started to then use the data as actionable intelligence. That couldn't be ignored. It couldn't be ignored. And you'd be surprised, in all sizes of corporations, sooner or later, they will not ignore, especially in this day and age. 15, 20 years ago may have been different. They would not ignore it. So actually, if you've really got the momentum, a lot of people wait for the top of the house. You're right. And I think Lou said it, you want it to come from the top of the house. I'm quite fortunate. I have a CEO and a C team who are fantastic. But if we come to them with it already, they're going to support, and it's just going to set it on that trajectory even quicker. And I think it's just getting that buzz and that energy. there's this thing when I heard this morning, people who learn their MBAs, 80% of people who ask for help will get it, just in general in life. But most people don't ask, and there's this stigma in a lot of, especially small organizations, and I don't see it in my company now, but will they want to? Is there an appetite? But nobody's asking the question, and and a lot of the people who will start these groups will not be right at the top of the house, David. They will be middle management, maybe in junior management, full of beans, energy, and they are the perfect people to drive these groups. Honest to God, you tell me Wednesday night we're going for, I don't drink, but we're going to a pub or a coffee, and it's for this group, and there's, I don't know, some crazy golf, and it's whatever they're doing, whatever the plan is. You're getting people from different levels, different backgrounds, different departments, but it's always driven by these people who are not at the top of the house. That very quickly, that positive noise gets very well noticed, because the smaller the organization, as I'm learning now, and by the way, I worked at HSBC as well, so they were very good at these groups. In a small organization, that noise, I don't want to call it noise, that positive momentum is picked up on very quickly, because you have fewer layers, and everything is noticed in these small organizations. But it's just getting it going. By doing that, you have the data, which Lou said, and I call it actionable intelligence. Once you take that to C-team people, they will drive it. Now, what they do, how they invest, what you need from them, you can start being tactical with how you hook people in. It does help having a couple seniorish people who will stand next to you and work with you. But instead of asking them, why don't you create a group that actually where they want to be there, not to be asked because they have to be. It's about hooking everybody in, and we're just stronger together. And I saw that in my last bank. Once you have the momentum, no organization is most of the time going to say no, and it's just creating a real positive buzz, and it's unstoppable, honestly. So we're looking forward to hearing what you do next, David, because honestly, sky's the limit.
I'm loving these answers, guys. Seriously, and couldn't agree more. The only thing I would add is, in that actionable intelligence, make sure to include the commercial elements. If there's any ways that you can save a business money or make the business money, they want to hear about it. Lead with it, and you'll usually get what you want from that point.
One thing I was just going to say to David is, I don't know about the role we play in the business, but from a recruitment standpoint or HR standpoint, talent retention is the new recruitment for me in the last 2 years. And just to be clear, whilst it's quite broad, people from protected classes, groups, and I talk empowerment, not over-imposing, not having one group stronger than the other, just people letting them have a voice and having that psychological safety, that net, which I don't think always, that really plays a big part in that talent retention bit. You may not be engaged in your day-to-day, but it's about the inclusion piece. Everybody wants to be part of something bigger in this world. Doesn't matter if you're an introvert, extrovert, age, whatever class, everybody wants, and there are always people who are just not comfortable to come out. So when you create a group and show it's okay, it will take time. But for me, with my TA hat on, that talent retention piece is where, it's better than throwing money. Oh, David's going to go to another company. Let's give him 5-10 grand more. Let's match it. I don't want to have this conversation. I want to know, what did we miss in the timeline in 12-18 weeks before? What did not happen? And it's not the job or the manager always. It helps, but it's also the groups, the people, how you feel. Is every Sunday night got to do this all over again sort of feeling, or are you actually, got work, but actually I'm looking forward because on Tuesday we've got this group meeting, I get to catch up on this, and I'll do some reports as well, and whatever you have to do. But I think it's that inclusion piece really, really, really is understated still in this day and age, because for me it links throughout. D&I is in every aspect of every part of every person of every department at every level. It cannot be ignored. That's my 2 pence. Sorry.
Oh, no, thanks, guys. And I'm sure David would be thanking you as well. Just in terms of the next question, this one is from Caroline. So she said, I've just started my own company on a tiny initial budget, my last maternity pay, and would like to make sure what I'm doing is inclusive to all types of customers. As someone who's worked in fields where I've often been asked to work for free, kudos, I'm conscious of not doing the same while making sure that I am also being inclusive as possible from the outset. How would you advise connecting with people / groups to get their input without also doing the same? Lou, would you like to kick us off on this one, and then we'll hear from Manawar?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because obviously I have my own business as well, and I have a project going on called the Non-Binary Corner, which is monthly LinkedIn lives where we create a platform for non-binary voices, because we didn't feel like there wasn't anything like that really, like that has that kind of point of view. And a lot of all the conversations, we don't have any sponsors. We started, me and 2 co-founders, we just putting our own free time in it. And when we go to people, we basically say, look, we have your name down our list. If you are in the capacity of like coming on without any payment, and you're happy to bring your topic, whatever you like, then we can have you on. If not, we can put you in the list for when we'll have a budget and we will actually have sponsors. So this is something that we do with the Non-Binary Corner, for example, because sometimes I think it's also, it depends what you're asking them to do as well. If it's a matter of like, a 30 minutes conversation that they just can hop on and basically advertise their skills and knowledge, it's different from asking someone for a week worth of work for free, for example, to create an inclusive project. So it really depends on the situation, but I wanted to bring you this dynamic because it's something that does happen a lot in non-profit projects or projects that are, because we are starting to raise money as well for gender affirming care for our audience. So it's kind of like, it depends what you're doing, but in terms of like business wise, personally, I don't work for free. Like, I think the only people that I would do pro bono work for, it's people that are from marginalized backgrounds, and that only within my own boundaries in terms of time and in terms of what I need as well. And I don't ask other people to work for free in the sense of, if I am making money out of it, if it's for profit, then I would be really careful. I would more talk about, for example, collaborations and then splitting clients' money than asking people for free, for example. But also, as someone that has a background in events management, and I found myself a lot of the times, we wouldn't have enough budget at the start. We had to sell tickets instead. So I have been in loads of those situations where you need to find, there is not like an easy answer with this. You need to understand. I think it's important that you just give people the option and like you have their consent and they exactly understand what you're doing, because if they know that they're participating to something that it's making only you money, then are they consensual to that? Are they happy with that, with supporting you? Or, what I mean? I think like you need to be transparent all the time, if there is money involved, or what their contribution is going to do, or what your contribution is going to do if you want to work for free. So I think these are elements, there would be different situations, but if you want to organize events as well, for example, it's best if you can find sponsors, but I'm also very aware that as someone that's tried a lot, and I've worked with loads of like different types of sponsorships among the years, sponsors takes time to build also sponsor kind of circle. It takes a lot of time to get funded, and there is also an element of intersectionality. Statistically, some people don't get as much opportunities as others. So sometimes we have to come together to bring that work forward without financial support, for example. So it really depends on the situations, but I think if you are transparent as possible, and you make sure people understand the value of what you are giving and what they're giving to you, then I think it's also possible to do it, without that element of money stopping something good from happening.
Amazing. Thank you, Lou. And just an apologies, the message has just come in now. But before we let Manawar answer, for context, in the chat it says, I'm working in promoting tourism to a region. Sorry.
What do you say? Sorry.
Just to give Manawar a little bit of
Yeah.
context, in his answer, Caroline's just posted into the chat about what type of business it is. So she said, just for context, I'm working in promoting tourism to a region.
Okay, so from me, I can only answer it from the public sector perspective in terms of there is no money and you have to work really hard to try and secure the money. And I guess you could take the parallels with it with a new business as well. So a lot of it is sponsorship, and if it's travel, it's going to be sponsorship and collaboration as well. Who else can you collaborate with? Not necessarily in that field, but to promote tourism. And through that, you'll get the branding. And one of the other things as well is to say, oh, look, if you are going to have an event or something, to showcase it on LinkedIn, because it's a new set of colleagues that you're bringing in, a new set of people through a network, and you're helping them build their network if they're in their infancy, if it's a new company they've formed, or it could be an individual who's freelance. So basically, I guess what I'm saying is that know who you're reaching out to and know what value they can bring to you. And often you don't necessarily need to go for the expensive person. You can go for, someone who's going to do it as pro bono, as Lou said, but you still get the benefits, both for yourself and for them as well, because you might be ahead of the game in terms of where they are and where they want to get to. And it comes down to collaboration and partnership, and not being afraid to ask that question. Can we collaborate? If they say no, move on to the next person. That's it.
Thank you so much. And just to echo that, my motto is don't ask, don't get. And it truly serves me well, because the three people that are answering all these questions would not be sat in front of you if I didn't live by that, stand by it, ask them to get involved in this for free, and give up their time, but just to, raise awareness. And they're all as equally passionate about D&I as I am. So they thankfully said yes. But yeah, it's just proof in the pudding. Don't ask, don't get. We've probably got enough time for two more questions. I am just conscious of time. So I've had one anonymously. And this is I'd like to say a nice and easy one. I'm going to ask for short answers, just the snappiest ones. But what is the difference between equality and equity? And I'm going to kick it to the floor and say, who would like to kick us off?
Okay.
Manawar, raise the hand first.
All right. Okay. All right. So for me, equity is giving the right tools and techniques so everyone's on a level playing field. So if someone needs some training, they need some money to buy certain things, it helps them to either, do the educational piece, do the shadowing piece. So in any team, you're going to have people that are up there, but you're going to have people at the bottom, and you want to bring them up as well. So I'm not necessarily saying disabilities or, race and gender, but it's giving the tools and techniques. And equality for me is the byproduct where everyone is on that level field, and you're looking at them as individuals. Lou, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great explanations. I think, I mean, I have the same understanding. Equity is the work that we do before we can reach equality. And it's definitely giving this. It's like when you're giving support that is measured to the need of the person. So whatever that might be, if it's someone that, for example, didn't have, formal training, but got into the job because you didn't put any barriers in recruitment, then you can support them in catching that formal training part that maybe they didn't have coming into the job. And so that, for example, would be an equitable approach. Other ways would be to create a very, and I actually seen a question in the comments about this, creating accessible recruitment processes, because a lot of the time they're extremely inaccessible for people with neurodivergencies, with disabilities of any kind. Also, like for people, non-English speakers, for example. So, a way to be equitable would be to make that process extremely accessible to all people with any kind of intersectionality, to give also options. Sometimes you might just put the option, if you cannot do, for example, the video interview, you could do it, in writing, or you could do it this way or that way. I think it's just about recognizing that people are all different, and that's okay. And it's okay if some people need a certain type of support more than another, because at any stage, any type of person is going to need more support than another person. It's just the reality of it. And I think it's where we need to get to as a society, is to recognize that It's a beautiful thing to be different, and it's a beautiful thing to have different needs.
100%.
For
Mike?
me personally, I call it the ladder of success. So equality is ensuring that everybody has that ladder from A to B to get to their individual success. Equity is me understanding that one ladder of success doesn't work for the next person, and everyone has different needs, or they're coming from a different starting point. So there's trying to understand that there's multiple ladders of success that I have to provide within a, contextually from my world, from a recruitment standpoint. So I think Lou or Ebony just touched on it, and they said, you know, some people just don't have a laptop to turn up for a video conference. They didn't have that education. What else can we do? Yeah, it's about it's the rebalancing of what we need to do. But equity is just understanding that everyone's starting from in that race at a different point. Some are ahead, some are behind, contextually, case by case. And there isn't that one ladder, that golden sort of, you know, bullet that kind of you just throw in there and that solves diversity or recruitment. No. It's understanding that we're all coming from a different starting point, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I came through in the 90s and it was different, and what I see now is completely different. It's just we're all different, and Lou just said we need to stop trying to be the same. Like it's embarrassing. The world would be so boring. Everyone is uniquely different, and it sounds so cheesy, but I do not regret saying it. It's everyone's different, has different strengths and areas of development, and we just need to identify, we need to understand, and we need to help. It's why we're here. It's why we're here. And recruitment is here to identify what they need if they're to be successful in this role. And it's not just culture fit, it's skills, it's background, it's next steps, it's guidance, it's mentorship, shaping individuals at whatever age. We never stop learning, and so on. So that's for me the difference between equality and equity.
Thank you so much. No, honestly, all three answers were absolutely bang on the money. I completely agree. And yeah, that difference should be celebrated. And often it's actually what is our super strength, the thing that makes us different. So don't try and push someone back into that mold. Bring it out. Like, let them shine, and you'll have a crap ton of stars. I was going to say something different there. Sorry, changed my mind. So just, I'm conscious we have got technically 2 minutes left of the session. I am going to take Nathan's question last and hope the panel will stay on for an extra 5 minutes. I think they will, but I appreciate if you do need to go. So please do obviously feel free, drop out of the session if you need to. There will be the recording posted in the group page, so you'll be able to catch the end at a later time. I just want to say thank you so much for being part of today. Couldn't do it without you all. And last but not least, please do take a minute. I posted some questions earlier in the chat just to give you kind of thoughts. I'm not asking for anything long-winded, just a few thoughts and feelings in the way of feedback for me and the panel. It just helps me create a better event even next time, or not better, but equally as amazing as this one. So please do that if you get a chance. Would really appreciate it. And yeah, Nathan, if you'd like to, hope it's a good question. Now you're finishing the session. No pressure, but please feel free.
Thanks, Ebony. I just had, my one question is, so at the start of the year, set up a colleague resource group, and there's probably 4 or 5 of them at the company I work for. My question is, it's going well so far. We've talked about many things, but how do you keep the momentum? Like, what's some of the tasks or working groups or something along those lines? Because it's all great at the start, but how do you ensure that energy continues? After the first 6 months and into year 1 and year 2.
I'd like to go first, and I will be short, very short, I promise. So hi Nathan. I'm probably somebody who enthusiastically jumps into a resource group during my career, and I'm the person who normally gets that itch, like, it's the momentum's going. The best person who led a group was just not one person. It was a group leading the group, and we turned. It was the switching of the roles. It was the inclusion. It was I just psychologically, I could go and download, vent, learn, listen, somebody would chair it, somebody would minute it, and it was equality inclusion in every aspect, like a work meeting, but we did it in a resource group, but they made it fun, and everyone played all the roles. And what that did was it got me to appreciate stuff, but it kept me on my toes, because you're kind of stepping into other roles. Because if you have a resource group and you're just turning up, and some people might turn their camera on, some might not, some may be a little bit more shy. It's having a group that can really bring you in, and I call it that sort of psychological sort of safety net, where actually it's okay to say something. There is no right or wrong, and creating that environment. I think once you get that, especially in a small group, you see people are just very proud. It goes from motivated to engaged. And what I used to always say for resource groups was, we don't want motivated people. Motivated, it's like candidates recruitment. I don't want a motivated person, because that has an on and off button. I want an engaged person, or you can call it passion, or there's other words for it. Somebody who wants to be there or actually feels part of the group. It's the human element, and you have to tap into it. And the problem you'll have, Nathan, is every person is individually so uniquely different, and it's great, but it's also one hell of a spider web to untangle, and certain things trigger some people off. Some people are driven by it, and it's just learning, trial and error together. But if you have the psychological environment, that safety environment, people won't be taking it to heart, and it just becomes this safe space where you can debate, you can challenge, you can raise, you can talk, you can download. I think a lot of resource groups are too tick box, and a lot of people are just too scared to say something, that when they come out of there, they'll go up 2 floors within their corporate building or wherever they work, and they'll be like, oh, I can't believe he or she said that. And I think it's about maturity, and I think it's the boundaries, but it all comes down to creating that trust factor within the environment. Environment is everything in every aspect of life. And as I get older, I'm learning that. And the best people who do these groups, they're engaged, not motivated. They're not using these groups to boost themselves up the corporate ladder. This is about leadership 101 for me. And leadership is not about leading. Leadership is about serving others. And that's the difference between the good and the bad resource groups across maybe 4 banks. So if you have a group and you guys are leading and serving the people in the group, your group will grow and thrive. I have no doubt.
And Manawar?
Yeah, it's all about the learning, and everything that Michael said in terms of the internal stuff. 100% agree on. I'm not going to add to that. I'm just going to say, Nathan, try and attend as many conferences as possible and learn off others. So this is a great place to learn, right? Connect with people on LinkedIn, and the more conferences you go, you're going to pick up things from there in terms of best practice. And don't be afraid to bring it back. And some of it might result in you asking for more money. But put that case together to say why you need to do something. And the other thing, the very final thing, try and bring in some external speakers to motivate your colleagues with those ideas. Over to you, Lou.
Yeah, so I have 2 things. One, realizing this is always about change management, okay? So the best way to keep momentum is that you from the start, people are extremely engaged with what's going to happen, and they have a really clear idea of what's going to change, their part in it, in the change, and all that sort of stuff. So I always advise, before you even get into that, it would be like really good to co-create the change management plan at a cultural level. So that means focus groups. It means like people have their say. It means that people feel involved. It means that people understand the need for it. So in that way, they will be personally involved as, and it's different from getting someone at the top saying, you must do this because it makes us look good. It becomes a personal investment. And then the second thing, and also I would repeat the thing about the natural leaders, because they are extremely important when you're doing change management initiatives. These are the influencers in change organizations. At present, I can actually recommend, there is a tool that was developed by Unlocking Potential. It's a Scottish company, and this software maps out the quality of relationships between an organization, and it gives you like a visual map of who are the toxic people and who are the good natural leaders. And it's an extremely good tool that I'm starting to use on bigger projects. and they've been doing very well with their case studies and stuff. So I recommend them. Colin Campbell is the CEO. You can find him on LinkedIn. And another thing that I would say, which is why I started my company, is create culture systems. So this is the thing. I think most of the time, the loss of momentum, apart from being a problem of mismanagement in the change, it's also a systemic problem, because the structures have not changed to welcome the actual micro change. So personally, the work I do with founders is about creating flat hierarchies. I don't believe in vertical hierarchies. I think they're outdated. I think there is absolutely no space for it anymore. They just, like vertical hierarchies are just supportive of extremely unequal systems that are based on manipulation, extreme bureaucracy. There is like loads of like problems. So you need to I personally think that this conversation needs to be about the systems, change the way that people work, because when people are embodying the change, that is not just affecting, it's not just a nice workshop for 1 hour, and then you go back in your work and it's actually super toxic, and your mental health is still bad, and it's even worse, because you build a cognitive dissonance, because you build this kind of like, I don't understand why my workplace is saying that they value diversity in one hand, and we're doing all these trainings, but then when it comes to the actual like everyday work, I'm feeling discriminated, I'm not feeling supported, and I'm feeling this is actually like all performative allyship. And that happens because the systems are not being updated, and there is no actual willingness to review that. And when I say systems, obviously we talk about practices, policies, but to give you like a really specific example would be, for example, creating the way you work in a team, instead of like having very good leadership that is not managers, leaders that are actually servant. They know the needs of the team, they understand the needs of the team, personal and work-wise, and they support their needs. Once you have the good leadership, then you have a very good team that is healthy, because everybody's feeling that they're co-creating the work. You don't need to be, and also like, supporting each other in that work, and like criticizing healthily each other's work and growing together. And that actually builds connection, momentum. Like you need to build that sense of belonging, and to build a sense of belonging, you need to have psychological safety, and you can only build that if you have healthy systems. And then from psychological safety, you build healthy practices which foster trust and connectivity, and that's how you build belonging. And when you have belonging, you also can do things like, cultural traditions, for example, is something that I really love, because they're a great way to actually bring people that are all different. And for example, I like cultural potlucks. You can do them virtually as well, which is just an easy way for someone to bring, hey, I made this meal and I want to tell you a story, and people connect with your story, and people actually understand you on a human level when you share stories, from colleagues that maybe are across departments and they would have never spoke with each other, for example. So I think like, we need to start to shift the way we see workplaces. They need to stop to be this pyramid of like capitalist, of production, and more of a circle of connectivity and working towards a purpose.
100%. Every single point that all of you just made then, I'm like,
thank you so much.
Yeah. One thing that I would actually like to add, Nathan, just in terms of, because you mentioned around sort of not losing motivation, it can be tiresome work. I actually run Diversity Innovation Group. Currently, I'd like to say, well, I kind of say I run it single-handedly in terms of running all the back stuff, but actually one of the things that I learned in the first year of running DIG was that you need friends. You need people that you can just talk to and vent to, and sometimes maybe swear at, not at, but saying that this has gone down, what am I doing next? And you need that support network. I was very fortunate. I found Mike, I found Lou, I found Manawar. We have separate chats all the time, and and sometimes me and Lou will sit on the call for 2 hours and have a brew and talk about everything that's going on with DIG. And I'm like, I'm giving up, I'm done, I've had enough. And Lou's like, no, you're not. Come on, be real, Ebony. Bring it back. You ain't gonna do that. You're just having a bad day, and that's fine. So yeah, so I'd say support network. It's okay to have bad days. Not to quote Manowar's background, but again, Rome was not built in a day. So you cannot do everything all at once. Try to set realistic goals. So my problem when I first started was I wanted to run 10 events a year. I wanted to do my video podcast. I also wanted to run a full-time job of a recruitment desk, which is not a 9 to 5 job, as you can probably imagine, right? And I realized there's only one of me. So what I started to do was say, well, actually, I could run 3 events a year. I could do my video podcast sporadically. It doesn't have to be a every weekly thing. I can get other people to post in the group. Or I talk about lots of different strands of D&I, but it doesn't have to be that I'm going to post every single week on X, every single week on this, and make it so that your calendar isn't fluid, and there's no fluidity in there. So those are my goals for kind of just staying motivated, and just remember, if it all goes to crap, like draw a line, come back the next day and start again. Because you're on the journey. And you're doing, the main thing is being on the journey, and that is the main part. So you're already ahead of half the game. So yeah, I think that finishes. Unless Mike, I know you had your hand raised there. I don't know if you.
Yeah, just one comment for Nathan. Actually, I was going to say for the resource groups, they can grow very quickly internally, and you can very quickly forget what that sort of resource group's identity or purpose was. So just always sort of having some sort of control points where you can sort of tap back into, you know, hey, what are we actually trying to achieve? And it is what Lou and Manawar and Ebony just said. It's actually that human connection piece, connecting with like-minded people, being part of something bigger. And people can articulate this very differently, but it really is just, there's a need since COVID. I'm not sure why, but there's various reasons, but there's a need for connection again. There's a disconnect now, and a lot of things that have been swept under the carpet the last 20, 30 or however long is all coming out. So what we're going to have is mental health, inclusion, D&I, and a long list of other things, and they're always connected, because D&I is in everything, every little thing, everywhere. So it's at the heart of everything. For me, it's just the resource groups shouldn't lose their identity of why they started. And for me, it begins, is involved, and ends always with with human connection and finding your tribe, your people. And they are out there, but you know, you just got to start it and not forget why you've done it.
Oh, that was such a perfect end. And I just want to say thank you all so much to everyone on the panel and the attendees. You're absolutely incredible.
Thank you, Ebony.
Thank you.
Great questions as well, everyone.
The questions were really good. I think, we will definitely, if you wouldn't mind, have to have a separate chat about this. I'm not going to say too much, but will there be a part 2? Will there not? Who knows? But I think it's been really good, and I think the panel gelled well. So we'll have to have a separate chat and talk about those things. I'll let everybody go, but I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day, and the rest of your week. And I'll be if you need me for anything at all, chat, recruitment. Don't catch me while I'm in Rome, because I won't come back to you. But no, I'm kidding. I will. But this has been so fun. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes,
have a good day.
Everyone.
Thank you. See ya. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.